Earlier sections we saw networking configurations and the Kerberos configuration. Now we'll proceed with the MoSMB configuration settings. MoSMB configuration settings, first we have to generate a Kerberos ticket for our server machine. Before generating a ticket, we will quickly go through the previous settings of Kerberos configurations located at etc krb5 conf. Here we have mentioned that default cache path should be of file type and the location of it should be opt MoSMB Kerberos ticket. Also, while adding the entries in the keytab file, we had added the encryption entries with respect to the user, MoUser. So currently we will generate a ticket with respect to the same user, so that when MoSMB is running, the ticket will be auto renewed. To generate a Kerberos ticket, we run the command kinit, mention the username and the domain name, mention the password, verify the ticket is generated, run the command klist -capital E. Now as we see here that ticket cache is present at Kcm location and not at a file location which we have mentioned in etc krb5 conf file. The reason behind is that in the file etc krb5 conf we have included the directory etc krb5 conf.t, so files under it will be included as well in the configuration. So there is a file under etc krb5 conf.t which is named as Kcm Default Cache. In this, the default cache settings are set to Kcm. So we can either comment I'll quickly go through this file. So in this file we can see that default cache name is mentioned at Kcm, and this line overrides the default configuration which we made in etc krb5 conf file. So we can either comment this out or we can delete this line, or we can even mention our preferred cache type here. Now we'll need to delete the earlier present ticket. So for that we'll run kdestroy command. Kdestroy, and we will generate the ticket again with same kinit command. This time you can see that the cache type is a file and the location is same as we have mentioned in the etc krb5 conf file. The next step is to go through the MoSMB configurations and change the settings as per the Kerberos configuration. So we'll just open MoSMB.json file. In this, we'll go to the auth section. Here we'll set auth mode to krb5. Next, we will go through the share configurations settings. We have mentioned share 1 as opt share. We'll keep the ACL strategy as posix ACLs for now. For share 1, we have disabled the UB strategy. So there is no need to change the UB users or UB groups related settings. For share 2, we have mentioned share path as OPT accounts, and we are keeping the ACL strategy as POSIX. Now for share 2, we have enabled the user-based enumeration. So in this, we will change the UB users and groups related settings. Now for your domain users to be able to see or list down the share, we will configure the UB users and groups as per our domain settings. So here we mention node user @ MoSMB. And if we want to give a group, then we can mention as domain users @ domain name. Now what this means is that this user will always be able to list down the share to, and any users which belong to domain users group will also be able to list down share to. Save these settings. Now I will start the SSSD service. Quickly check the status of SSSD service first. As it is already in the running state, we will not restart this service. Now, to verify if the SSSD mapping is happening correctly, we'll run the command id and we'll give the domain username. Here we can see that our Linux server is mapping domain users, and we are getting the UID and the GID with respect to the domain. We can verify the same thing on the AD side as well. Just go to the AD machine and we can run PowerShell in administrative privileges, and we can run the command get AD user a username and its properties. Currently I'm just running the selective properties. Here we can see that our Mo user has a user ID as 1154, which is similar to this UID number mapped here, and our primary group is set to domain users and the primary group ID is 513. So we can see the similar thing in the group ID 513 and domain users. Similarly, we will check for another user, which is MoAdmin. Here we can see that MoAdmin is 1153 user ID and 512 group ID, and it belongs to domain admins group. So on the AD side, we'll check same thing for the MoAdmin user. Here you can see that SID is 1153 and it belongs to domain admins group, and its primary group ID is 512. Now, as we have seen that SSSD is running and ID mapping is working perfectly, we'll move on to creating a domain list.txt file. This file is created at etc MoSMB location domain_list.txt. In this, we mention MoSMB ad ad2.dom. In this we have to mention the our configured ad name. If this file is not present already, you can manually create this file. Next, we will change the share permissions as per our domain users. So as we saw earlier that we have exposed paths opt share and opt accounts as our share paths via MoSMB. So we'll set the permissions, domain user permissions to them. So now we'll set more users permission and we'll give domain users group permission for both opt share and opt accounts. Here we can see that Mo user has become our owner of the share path opt accounts and opt share, and the group level permissions are set to domain users group. Now we'll start the MoSMB service. Now we can see the message that authentication mode is krb5 and the SSSD service is running. Let's clear my screen. Go through the logs, MoSMB.log, and we can see that MoSMB server is in running state. Our next step is simply left is to access the client with the FQDN of the server. Now, for this to work, we need to log into our client machine with the domain user, or not as a client's local account but as a domain user. So here we can see that I have logged into this session with MoAdmin user of MoSMB AD2 domain. To access the share, we'll mention the FQDN of our server machine, which is alligator 20 MoSMB AD2.dom. So we'll just mention that here. Now we can see we have only getting list of share 1 and the share 2 is not getting listed, as share 2 permissions are configured to be listed only for domain users, the users which are belonging to the group domain users. And as we saw earlier that most admin user does not belong to domain users group, it only belongs to domain admins group. So share 2 is not visible for this user. And if we check the properties of this share, the security section, you will see that the owner is set to Mo user and the group level permissions are for domain users, and others have only read permissions, and the list contains. So if we go in the share 1 and try to create a new folder, we'll get that permission, we do not have permission and the access is denied to carry out. Similarly, now we'll check it. We'll go through another client session which is logged in with Mo user, MoSMB AD2 Mo user, and here we will access our share again with the FQDN of server, which is alligator20.mosmb82.com. Now here we can see that share 2 is listed. Now as we have given permissions to Mo user and or domain users. So both the shares are visible to us. We go through the properties. We will again see that Mo user is the owner and domain users have the read permissions. So as Mo user has the write permissions, we should be able to create the new folder or rename the directories as we wish to. So that's it with the Kerberos access for the standalone machine. We'll see you in the next lecture.